You fear rejection because your mind treats it like death. But what if rejection is only a tool to expose real power? Once you see rejection as a weapon, you stop bleeding from it. Machiavellian thinking begins where emotional thinking collapses. It treats every reaction as data. When you feel rejected, your first impulse is personal pain and humiliation. A Machiavellian mind replaces that impulse with quiet measurement and strategic curiosity. Instead of asking why they did not choose you, it asks who gains control. Rejection anxiety is not created by rejection itself. It is created by meaning. You decide that rejection means you are small, unworthy, or permanently excluded. This meaning becomes a psychological script that plays every time someone pulls away. Dark psychology starts by exposing this script, then cutting it from your identity. Manipulators understand this script better than you. They know your fear of exclusion. They know you feel safe only when you are accepted and liked. So they design a silent system. They offer selective approval as addictive currency. They give you attention, then suddenly withdraw it, then return with cold distance. Each cycle trains your nervous system to chase their approval more and more. You never notice this, but every ignored message becomes a micro-rejection training session. Every delayed reply, every small dismissal, every shift in tone changes your inner calibration. Slowly you accept a rule: if they move away, you must move closer. This is how manipulators control people without clear commands or visible aggression. Machiavellian thinking destroys this rule by rewriting the value structure inside your mind. It teaches you that the one who chases approval is always the weaker player. The one who can walk away from approval becomes the psychological center of gravity. So when rejection appears, a Machiavellian mind asks a different question inside. Is this person rejecting my value or exposing their own limited perception? The first step is emotional detachment from the surface event. You feel the sting, but you treat it like a smoke screen. Under that smoke are hidden power dynamics, motives, insecurities, and unspoken expectations. Your task is not to argue with the rejection. Your task is diagnosis. Machiavelli once said, if you want freedom, you must control your own fear. Fear of rejection is the most profitable fear for manipulators and fragile egos. When you fear being left out, you will pay any emotional price to stay in. You will over-explain, over-please, and over-justify your presence in their life. This makes you easy to drain and easy to program. Notice what happens in emotional draining relationships. The pattern is always similar. You invest attention, time, and energy, but you receive confusion and subtle disrespect. They use tiredness, silence, and mood swings as shields against any accountability. You keep proving your intentions, they keep withholding clear validation. Over time, your nervous system learns that your value is conditional and unstable. Machiavellian thinking does something brutally clean at this point. It stops measuring your worth through their responses. It measures their worth through their patterns. Instead of asking, why am I not enough, you ask, what are they signaling? Are they showing emotional maturity? Are they consistent? Do their actions match their words? If the answer is no, then their rejection becomes a red flag, not a verdict. This mental flip is the birth of unshakable confidence. Confidence in dark psychology is not loud, it is cold and accurate. You are no longer begging reality to confirm you, you are scanning reality for truth. Rejection becomes information, not a wound, and information sharpens your strategic intelligence. Albert Bandura once said, if you change belief, you change behavior naturally. Your belief about rejection forms your self-image and your response under pressure. If you believe rejection means deep personal failure, your behavior becomes desperate and clingy. If you believe rejection reveals misalignment or manipulation, your behavior becomes selective and calm. The event is the same. The inner frame decides whether you break or evolve. Machiavellian thinking builds an inner court around your value. Only some people are allowed inside that court, based on their psychological consistency. You do not audition for random observers. You evaluate who deserves audience with you. This sounds arrogant, but it is actually protective for your mental energy. Emotional vampires cannot drain what they cannot enter. Your boundaries become a silent fortress. To apply this, start observing every rejection like a strategist, not a victim. Ask which rule they are trying to install inside your mind through this rejection. Are they training you to chase, to shrink, or to doubt your instincts? Once you see the attempted rule, you refuse to accept it as your identity. You can still feel sad, but you do not internalize the script they offer. Dark psychology is not about becoming cruel. It is about becoming unprogrammable. Machiavellian thinking removes the emotional hooks that others use to steer your behavior. When someone pulls away to control you, you respond with inner stillness and analysis. You decide whether their absence is a loss or freedom disguised as distance. The more you practice this frame, the more your rejection anxiety dissolves. Your body still remembers old panic, but your mind refuses old translations of events. Gradually, your nervous system accepts a new law: rejection cannot define essential worth. What defines your worth is alignment with your own values and long-term strategy. Here the twist appears quietly. Once you stop fearing rejection, you become more attractive. People sense that you are not begging for a place at their table. You carry an unspoken message: I am willing to walk away for my peace. Manipulators hate this energy because their favorite tool suddenly turns against them. Yet there is a deeper layer you have not uncovered about rejection and hidden loyalty. The real question now is simple and dangerous for you. You think your silence is your protection, but your silence can also expose you. You believe you stay calm, but calmness without strategy becomes weakness. If you want true psychological freedom, you must understand unseen motives. Rejection anxiety grows from one invisible belief, the belief that others hold the final verdict on your worth. This belief makes you reactive, emotional, and easily destabilized by small changes in someone's attitude. A single cold message, a small dismissive tone, or a delayed reply can shake your inner stability. Manipulators use these micro shifts with precision because they know your nervous system will respond. Dark psychology reveals that people rarely reject you because of your value. They reject you to test their influence. A person who wants control will withdraw attention to measure your reaction. If you panic, over-explain, or chase their approval, they learn something powerful about you. They learn that your self-worth depends on external acceptance, and that dependence becomes leverage. Machiavellian thinking flips this entire dynamic in one stroke. Instead of reacting emotionally to rejection, you observe patterns like a strategist studying human nature. Every cold behavior becomes diagnostic data. Every silence becomes a window into motivation. Your goal is not to fix their behavior. Your goal is to expose the psychological machinery behind it. Machiavelli once said, "If you understand intention, you understand control." Rejection often hides intention more than emotion. It is a mask that reveals the hidden agenda of others. Some people reject to feel powerful. Some reject to drain you slowly. Some reject because they fear your confidence. Once you learn to read intention beneath rejection, you stop absorbing emotional poison. Emotional draining individuals follow predictable rules. They offer warmth only when they need something and switch to coldness when you become independent. They never give stable responses because stability removes their control. Your anxiety is the fuel they rely on. Your fear of losing them keeps you under their psychological orbit. This is why rejection from such people feels heavy, confusing, and exhausting. You are not reacting to the person. You are reacting to their pattern of intermittent reinforcement. Your brain gets addicted to unpredictable approval because each small validation feels rare and precious. This is not affection, this is conditioning, and you were trained without noticing. To destroy this conditioning, Machiavellian thinking introduces a brutal clarity. It teaches you that consistency is the true signal of healthy connection. Anyone who constantly switches between interest and distance is managing your emotions, not expressing theirs. Your value is not unstable. Their emotional pattern is unstable, and your anxiety comes from misreading this. Unshakable confidence starts when you stop asking what is wrong with you. Instead, you ask, what is the psychological cost of allowing this person influence? Does their presence make you stronger, sharper, calmer, or more aligned? Or does their presence drain your energy, distort your judgment, and pull you into self-doubt? Albert Bandura once said, if you master perception, you master self-belief. Your perception of rejection determines whether you shrink or rise after conflict. If you interpret rejection as exposure of truth, not proof of your failure, everything changes. You stop chasing clarity from unstable people, and you start analyzing why they need to destabilize you. Machiavellian thinking removes the emotional lens and replaces it with a strategic one. You stop taking behavior personally. You start reading behavior as a psychological statement. A rejection becomes a message about their character, not your worth. Once this separation forms inside your mind, your anxiety begins to lose its power. The moment you detach from their approval, their ability to manipulate collapses. They cannot train you with silence. They cannot control your mood with withdrawal. Your calm becomes intentional, not accidental, and it sends a strong internal message. I choose my reactions. I do not borrow them from others. But there is a deeper layer of Machiavellian thinking that destroys rejection anxiety entirely. A layer that shifts you from defensive confidence to strategic superiority. You have not stepped into that layer yet, but you are about to. The question is simple, but it will change how you see human behavior forever. Are you ready to know why rejection is sometimes a strategic illusion, designed to pull you closer instead of push you away? You think rejection pushes you away, but sometimes rejection is designed to pull you in. You assume distance means disinterest, but distance can be a psychological trap. If you want real control of your mind, you must decode this trap. Machiavellian thinking reveals a subtle truth. Rejection is often a crafted illusion. People who crave silent influence do not use force, they use uncertainty. Uncertainty makes your mind chase clarity, and this chase becomes a predictable weakness. When someone pulls back without explanation, your brain enters analysis mode. You replay conversations, you question your tone, you doubt your intentions. The more you think about them, the stronger their psychological imprint becomes. Manipulators understand this loop instinctively. They know a confused mind is a controllable mind, and clarity kills their influence. So they reject you not to remove you, but to trigger your pursuit of emotional stability. You seek answers, they withhold answers, and the imbalance grants them control. Dark psychology calls this invisible tethering, a method where your attention is captured without direct effort. The rejection is not the weapon, your reaction becomes the weapon. Your fear of losing approval creates emotional momentum, and that momentum drags you toward them. This is why you feel more attached to people who confuse you than people who respect you. Machiavelli once said, if you want loyalty, create dependency. Dependency is not created through kindness, it is created through inconsistency. The mind attaches stronger to unstable rewards because unpredictability creates emotional investment. A stable response is comforting, but an unstable response is addictive. You never notice this, but the people who drain you emotionally always follow a pattern. They compliment you when you pull away, but they ignore you when you need clarity. They show interest when you are strong, but they withdraw when you express vulnerability. Each shift teaches your nervous system a dangerous rule. If you want their warmth, you must earn it by shrinking yourself. Machiavellian thinking breaks this rule by destroying the illusion behind it. The illusion is the belief that rejection means lack of value. The truth is that rejection often means lack of emotional capacity in the other person. Your worth does not decrease because someone with limited awareness fails to recognize it. You only lose when you internalize their limitation as your identity. Confidence becomes unshakable when your inner dialogue changes. Instead of asking, what did I do wrong, you ask, what pattern did they reveal? Instead of thinking, why did they reject me, you ask, why do they need distance to feel powerful? Instead of collapsing under emotional withdrawal, you observe it like a scientist studying behavior. Albert Bandura once said, if belief survives pressure, it becomes identity. Your belief about your value must survive emotional pressure, silence, and rejection. If your self-worth collapses during emotional tension, then it was built on external validation. Machiavellian thinking rebuilds worth from internal principles, not external reactions. This is why strategic minds remain calm when others pull back. They understand that distance is information, not an emotional injury. They do not chase answers, they do not justify their presence, they do not shrink for approval. They analyze and then decide the cost of continued investment. This calmness is not passive, it is deliberate psychological positioning. Your non-reaction disrupts the manipulator's plan because you deny them emotional data. No data means no leverage means no control. Your silence becomes stronger than their rejection because it refuses to bend. Once you reach this level, rejection anxiety loses its meaning. You stop fearing who leaves, you start evaluating who should stay. Your value becomes self-authored, not audience-dependent. This is the mental sovereignty that dark psychology protects. But there is a higher layer where Machiavellian thinking transforms confidence into power. A layer where rejection becomes a tool you use rather than fear. The real question waiting for you now is this: what happens when you learn to reject strategically before anyone gets the chance to destabilize you? You wait for others to choose you, but power begins when you choose first. You fear rejection, but strategic rejection protects your psychological territory. If you want unshakable confidence, you must understand selective distancing. Machiavellian thinking teaches a silent rule: the one who chooses first controls the frame. When you wait for approval, you become reactive and emotionally exposed. Your self-worth becomes negotiable because you allow others to define your position. But when you learn to reject strategically, you reclaim the authority you surrendered unconsciously. Strategic rejection is not cruelty, it is psychological filtration. You are not rejecting people, you are rejecting patterns that damage your stability. Dark psychology shows that emotional drainers thrive on your inability to close doors. They appear inconsistent, but their inconsistency is their weapon. Your tolerance becomes their playground, and your fear of losing them becomes their leverage. Machiavellian thinking breaks this cycle by teaching one critical principle. You reject behavior, not individuals, and this rejection sets the hierarchy of influence. Anyone who drains your energy loses access. Anyone who respects your boundaries keeps access. Your confidence becomes unshakable because your value is no longer up for negotiation. Machiavelli once said, "If you guard your space, you guard your power." Your mental space is your castle, and emotional drainers attack through confusion. When you deny access to inconsistent people, you create a barrier that protects your inner state. Your nervous system stops dancing to their unstable rhythm, and your clarity returns. Notice how emotional draining patterns work. They start warm to gain entry, then switch cold to create dependency. They use silence to create anxiety. They use attention to create relief. You get trapped between fear of losing and hope of regaining connection. This loop destroys your confidence because it turns your emotions into a reward system. Strategic rejection ends this loop instantly. When you sense manipulation, inconsistency, or emotional volatility, you step back deliberately. Your withdrawal disrupts their strategy because they lose the ability to predict your behavior. Distance becomes your psychological shield and your diagnostic tool. The right people respect the distance. The wrong people panic because they lose control. Albert Bandura once said, "If you master self-regulation, you master outcomes." Rejection anxiety is a sign of poor internal regulation because you rely on external cues. But when you reject strategically, you shift from external dependence to internal dominance. Your decisions become intentional, your emotions stabilize, and your boundaries grow firm. This creates a new psychological identity inside you. You are no longer the person who fears being left. You are the person who decides alignment. Every interaction becomes a choice, not a test of worth. Confidence flows naturally because you stop auditioning and start evaluating. Strategic rejection also exposes hidden motives. When you step back, observe who respects your silence and who gets threatened by it. Those who respect boundaries value stability. Those who panic relied on manipulation. Your distance forces people to reveal their genuine intentions without words. This is the hidden power of Machiavellian thinking, silence as a filter. You discover who aligns with your standards and who needs your uncertainty to control you. Your confidence becomes rooted in clarity, not approval. But there is an even deeper layer, a layer where rejection becomes a psychological weapon. A layer where you do not just protect your mind, you reshape how others behave around you. The next question will challenge your entire understanding of human influence. What happens when your controlled indifference makes others fear losing access to your energy? You believe people fear losing you because of your qualities, but they actually fear losing your emotional stability. You think confidence attracts, but controlled indifference creates a different level of psychological gravity. If you want true influence, you must understand how access becomes currency. Machiavellian thinking reveals a hidden principle. People value what is scarce and respect what is selective. When you offer unlimited emotional access, others treat your presence as predictable. Predictability reduces perceived value, and reduced value invites subtle disrespect. But when your attention becomes deliberate, measured, and difficult to obtain, people instinctively recalibrate. Controlled indifference is not avoidance, it is strategic neutrality. You do not react quickly, you do not emotionally collapse, you do not over-explain. Your calm detachment forces others to confront a rare psychological experience. They cannot predict you, and unpredictability builds mystique. Manipulators hate mystique because it denies them control. They rely on your emotional transparency to craft their strategy. Your fears, your anxieties, and your reactions give them a map of your vulnerabilities. But when you shift into controlled indifference, the map disappears. Dark psychology shows that emotional drainers operate through two silent tools. They elevate themselves by making you feel uncertain, and they create stability only when you accept their terms. This keeps you tied to their emotional rhythm, always hoping for warm behavior. Controlled indifference breaks their rhythm because you replace their reward system with your own. Machiavelli once said, "If you cannot be read, you cannot be controlled." This quote defines the entire psychology of controlled indifference. When you stop showing anxiety, stop seeking reassurance, stop reacting to silence, their influence collapses. Their power came from your emotional transparency, not from their intelligence. Albert Bandura once said, "If confidence survives uncertainty, it becomes dominance." Controlled indifference is the birthplace of this dominance, because you teach your mind to remain calm under pressure. Pressure that once made you chase, panic, or shrink now becomes emotional noise in the background. Your focus shifts to observation and pattern recognition instead of emotional compliance. This shift creates a powerful psychological advantage. People who once rejected you lightly now hesitate before creating distance. People who once took you for granted now adjust their tone when interacting with you. People who once dismissed your presence now seek your validation unconsciously. Why does this happen? Because controlled indifference changes your perceived status. It signals inner stability, emotional maturity, and selective attention. These qualities create psychological weight, and psychological weight controls social dynamics. You never notice this, but confidence built from external validation is fragile. Confidence built from internal detachment is unbreakable. This confidence scares manipulators because they cannot shake it with rejection or inconsistency. Your indifference creates a subtle fear in others, the fear of losing access to a stable mind. People instinctively respect what gives them psychological safety, even when that safety comes through quiet firmness. Controlled indifference also prevents emotional exploitation. You do not reward unpredictable behavior. You do not respond to manipulation. You do not entertain draining patterns. You shift from reacting to choosing, and this shift elevates your psychological position. But there is one more layer left, the deepest one. A layer where Machiavellian thinking does not just destroy rejection anxiety, it rewires your core identity. a layer where confidence becomes effortless because your entire worldview changes. And the question that opens this final transformation is simple but powerful. Are you ready to learn why unshakable confidence is not built by strength, but by removing one specific belief that has controlled you your entire life? You think confidence is built by adding strength, but true confidence is built by removing one belief. You believe rejection hurts because you are not enough, but the real reason is different. If you want unshakable confidence, you must erase the belief that others define your worth. This belief has shaped your reactions since childhood. You learn to measure yourself through acceptance, approval, praise, or validation. Every rejection felt like a shrinking of identity. Every silence felt like evidence against your value. Dark psychology exposes this belief as the core vulnerability manipulators rely on. They can withdraw attention because you believe attention equals worth. They can create confusion because you believe clarity must come from them. They can destabilize you because you believe your emotional balance depends on external signals. This belief places your psychological power in someone else's hands. Machiavellian thinking destroys this belief by revealing a deeper truth. Worth is not created by others, worth is recognized by others. Whether they recognize it or not does not change the source, it only reveals their capacity. You are not failing when someone rejects you, they are merely showing their limitation. Machiavelli once said, "If you want power, stop letting others decide your value." When you internalize this idea, rejection loses its emotional teeth. Silence stops feeling like punishment, coldness stops feeling like judgment. You interpret behavior as information, not confirmation of internal flaws. Albert Bandura once said, "If belief shifts, identity evolves automatically." When you stop believing others control your worth, your entire identity reshapes. Your nervous system stops panicking during distance. Your mind stops chasing reassurance. Confidence emerges naturally because your internal value no longer fluctuates with external behavior. Unshakable confidence is not loud or dramatic. It is quiet, stable, and deeply rooted in emotional self-authorship. You stop explaining yourself to unstable people. You stop shrinking for approval. You stop personalizing inconsistency. Your responses become calm because your identity is not threatened. Rejection anxiety dissolves because the old belief dissolves. You no longer fear being left out because you no longer seek validation as emotional currency. You choose your connections based on alignment, consistency, energy, and psychological safety. Your boundaries become firm without effort because you do not fear losing access. This changes how others behave around you. They sense your grounded presence, they sense your selective attention, they sense your stable identity. People who once manipulated you lose their power because you no longer respond to their triggers. People who once underestimated you recalibrate because they cannot control what they cannot shake. Machiavellian thinking transforms you into a psychologically sovereign individual. You understand motives, you decode patterns, you stay detached under pressure. Your confidence becomes unshakable because it is no longer built on emotional dependency. It is built on clarity, self-regulation, and a firm internal narrative. Now the manual reaches its final truth. Rejection was never your enemy. The belief behind rejection was the real enemy. Once that belief collapses, rejection becomes neutral information instead of emotional danger. Confidence rises because fear loses its foundation. But the story does not end with understanding, it ends with a question. A question that determines whether you live with this knowledge or embody it. Now that you know how manipulators use rejection to shape your mind, the real challenge is this. Will you continue letting external signals define you, or will you finally become the author of your own psychological worth?